The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 8. Alsace. It was winter when I arrived in the provincial domain of Alsace, although my recent experience in Arundel made it seem like a paltry excuse for winter indeed. I hoped at first to see some of the seasonal merriment that Arundel could no longer enjoy. Snowmen, cider, Yule fires, but all I saw were shuttered doors and nervous looks. Somewhere deep in the woods, the villagers told me. But then, I find myself wondering whether my patron already knows what lurks in the forest of Alsace. In my last report, you referred to Captain Flint as Nathaniel. I never mentioned Flint's first name in my report. This raises the question, if my erudite and supercilious patron is already acquainted with these domains, why has he sent me to survey them? You do not strike me as a man who wastes time or resources, Yensid. You would not have me provide information you already knew. If you shared your true motivations with me rather than spying on my family and composing insults, I could tailor my reports more specifically to your needs. Perhaps you would not find them so bereft then. At any rate, regardless of whether or not this is news to my patron, the villagers told me that somewhere, deep in the woods, a hideous beast lived in a twisted castle, and it was due to emerge at any time to sate its monstrous appetite. By the time I finished my visit, I knew that the beast was not the monster that the people of Alsace should truly fear. The Lord. The people of Alsace spoke in hushed tones of the beast who stalked them in the night, and who harbored a particular appetite for beauties of marrying age. Attractive maidens locked themselves away at night with all the terror of Barovian peasants. Their troubles began some years back, when the village eccentric arrived in town, raving that the beast had stolen his daughter and locked her away in a dungeon. They laughed at the time, but when young Belle returned with a similar tale, they launched a daring attack to kill the beast and bring back its head. The expedition ended in disaster, with Belle and her father murdered by the beast, and Belle's fiancé, Gaston, swearing revenge. From that moment on, the villagers claim, the beast has not been satisfied to remain at his castle, but is set forth to devour villagers and livestock alike with the coming of the full moon. All attempts to find his castle have ended in failure, and they believe it to be protected by magic. Gaston is now the prefect of his home village of Villeneuve. To protect other women from meeting his sweetheart's tragic fate, he has instituted martial law and is rallying the men, only the men, into his own personal militia. I have nothing but admiration for those who seek to shield their loved ones from monsters, a fact of which my patron is all too aware. But in Gaston's case, well, as I will explain, I believe that the selfless protection of his fellow citizens was the furthest thing from his mind. The land. According to the villagers who spoke to me, Villeneuve was a quiet, simple town before the beast began his reign of terror. Now, all its resources were marshaled for two purposes. One was to defend the town from monstrous attack. The militia had surrounded the village with fortifications and implemented a strict curfew, with Gaston, in his infinite chivalry, personally ensuring that the town's loveliest women were safely locked away after nightfall. Villeneuve's other purpose was a constant massaging of Gaston's tremendous ego. I have become well acquainted with narcissistic behavior over the past few months, but I admit that Gaston's boorishness shocked even me. The prefect has taken the antler as his personal symbol, and there's tremendous pressure for every man, woman, and child in Villeneuve to bedeck their homes in antler imagery as a sign of support. Whenever he led his army of sycophants out for yet another fruitless hunt for the beast, the townsfolk were always ready to fawn over him upon his return, hanging breathlessly on his accounts of hunting the creature and missing it by a hair, but bringing back a bear or wolf in its stead. My first thought was that Gaston had invented the beast to burnish his own image as a mighty hunter, although I eventually learned that the truth was more sinister. For his part, Gaston was quite pleased to have a new woman in town. I think he assumed that I would swoon over his preening and posturing as much as the ladies of Villeneuve. He gave me an exhaustive tour of the town, and an even more exhaustive tour of his hunting trophies, before escorting me to a dark corner of the tavern, leaning close, and suggesting that I might enjoy a private interview. I declined, repeatedly, and as Gaston made the offer with increasing avidity, I realized that a more decisive refusal was in order. When I rejected him in the form of an eldritch blast, he doubled over with pain, then looked up at me, snarling, with eyes that had gone from blue to yellow. At that moment, I realized the true identity of the beast of Elsaz and fled into the snowy night. Dread possibilities. If I had been unable to cast fly, it is likely that either Gaston or the pack of wolves he summoned in his wake would have devoured me. As it was, however, even though the people of Elsaz had been searching fruitlessly for the castle for some time, I found myself at its gates within less than an hour. This came as no small surprise. I was certain that Gaston had fabricated the beast in the castle to cover up his own crimes, which would explain the people's inability to find it. I now suspect that the castle has some way of protecting itself from those who desire harm to its residents. The castle was dark and forbidding, its turrets dotted with leering gargoyles, and was in a state of tremendous disrepair. I entered the ruined Great Hall with caution, and immediately felt eyes watching me from the gloom, dozens of them from every shadow and corner. A quick use of Eldritch Sight proved that this was not my imagination, as virtually every object in the castle fairly reeked of transmutation magic, and some of them moved under their own power before my eyes. As I stepped forward to examine the animated objects, I heard a roar from the top of the stairs, and all the candles in the Great Hall were instantly extinguished. I could make out a bestial shape, as large as a bear, hulking on the balcony above me. Before I could flee, the beast leaped from the balcony to land in front of me with surprising grace. He peered at me with the vicious but vacuous eyes of a frenzied animal, but the rage went out of them as he scanned my face, leaving only bewildered sorrow. He reached for me, making inquisitive grunting sounds, and stroked my hair with a single massive finger. I was able to calm him with gentle words. I doubt he understood them, but he comprehended my tone well enough. He led me around the castle with the hopeful expression of a dog wishing to play with its master. When we passed a certain set of double doors, however, he became agitated. The aggressive cast returned to his eyes, and he pushed me away from the corridor with his massive paws, snarling. Imagining the fit of pique my patron would unleash if I left this room unexplored, I assumed gaseous form and slipped under the doors. Beyond it were the ruins of an enormous and once grand library, one who seemed to have been actively destroyed rather than falling to the ravages of time. The books appeared to be mundane rather than magical, and I wondered at first why the beast would protect it so fiercely, until I glimpsed the spectral figure of a beautiful woman in a blue dress. Unfortunately, I was unable to communicate with her in gaseous form, and that shape was my only possible escape from the library. I doubted that an eldritch blast would stop the beast for long. I retreated from the castle, the beast's mournful howls echoing behind me. Parting thoughts. While the beast is real, I cannot believe that he is responsible for the deaths in Elsaz. His temper might lead him to kill someone who stumbled upon his castle by chance, but it is impossible to imagine him leaving it to hunt for human prey. No, responsibility for all these deaths, and likely even those of Belle and her father, lies solely at Gaston's feet. The beast is nothing but a convenient scapegoat for Gaston's predations, and while the lost and hopeless look in his eyes is nothing short of heartbreaking, I could not find its cause or how to help him, although I suspect it has to do with the ghost of the woman in the library. Perhaps there was a history between them, but who could ever learn to love a beast? Regardless, I wish I could do something for him, even more than I wish that I could see what happens to Gaston when the villagers learn the truth. Perhaps the magic of the beast's castle sought to keep me there, for I found myself wandering in the mists longer than usual for this journey. I had to check multiple times to be sure that I had not lost my Carnival Mask Mist Talisman. However, as I write, I can feel the clamminess of the mists warming to the humidity of the bayou, and I know that I'm almost there. Regards, D.
I find your continual indignation vexing, my little servant. It is not the place of the pupil to question the methods of the teacher, and often the lessons are enlightening to all involved. You will continue to survey these lands as I have instructed, or I shall find another who will. Now that the matter is settled, let us evaluate Elsa's lordship. Gaston is nothing more than a cad whose attempts at courtship make von Zarovich out to be a gentleman, and Drakov's military career competent. Leading a campaign against himself is a clever ploy, and one I would not believe such a brainless brute capable of. However, he is essentially tightening the noose around his own neck. It's only a matter of time before an astute individual discovers his secret as you have done, my little scholar. As for the beast you encountered, he's clearly under an elaborate and artfully crafted curse. Such curses are not easily removed. But perhaps as my servant devotes more time to her studies and less to the speculation of her patron's intentions, she will gain the knowledge and ability to save this creature that she evidently desires.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at DarklordAslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.